Happy Friday and happy Fridays with Fidelman. I'm Cheryl Fidelman, life coach, trauma healer, and writer. And I believe that unhealed trauma steals the potential of our life, and that codependence is the most obvious way in which we demonstrate our unhealed trauma in relationship with others. Today is the first Friday, March 2020, and today's topic on Fridays with Fidelman is the black sheep of the family. There's a couple of ways in which we can look at this concept of the black sheep of the family. That, you feel like you're a black sheep because you think differently than your family. Or your family has, you're from a very specific culture and your family is consciously or unconsciously loyal to that culture, and you feel like you've gone outside of that culture and you haven't followed those traditions, cultural traditions, religious traditions, and so on, and or you feel like your family has all lived in a very particular way, like they all have a certain allegiance to one of your parents or a family member, and that family member controls the psychology of the family, and you've gone outside of that. You don't want to be loyal to the control of that particular family member. Or maybe you have taken the path less traveled, right? Like you're an artist or an entrepreneur, or you haven't done the marriage, family, 9 to 5, kids thing that the rest of the family has done. So you feel like you're a little bit of a different brushstroke than the rest of the family. Or you've moved away. You're the only one that's moved away to another, to another state, or to live in a different type of community. And then there's what they call the black sheep syndrome. Right? So not only have you, separate from, or maybe in addition to all of what I just described, the black sheep syndrome is often the one who, because you're either living a different kind of life, and or you've had a lot of issues that the family has had to attend to, a lot of emergencies, a lot of breakdowns that kind of has sucked a lot of the family attention and energy, that also that can create in someone the black sheep syndrome, where the family is actually oriented around helping you or this particular family member because they're just need a little more help in life than the rest of the family does. Now, being the black sheep of the family, or if you feel like you're the black sheep of the family, or you identify as the black sheep of the family, it's interesting, because I think that for some people, if they feel like they're the black sheep of the family, or like, I'm just not like my family. I'm the one who was born to be not like my family. I'm just a different quality of human, or a different, quality of fabric, or my psychological disposition doesn't conform to what they conform to. So I want to include in that, or challenge that, by saying that for some of us who are black sheepish, we have so much more in common with our family than we may want to think, or that we may be able to see, or that so much more in common with our family that is to be proud of and grateful of, that may not be fully in our sight if we identify as a black sheep of the family. Now, I think that I'm both. I think that was the black sheep. I also think that I was in this black sheep syndrome for a long time, because my family had a rush to help me in so many different moments of my life, and that at times I felt that they were helping me out of love, and at times I could see that I was stressing and de-stressing my family with the amount of help I needed as I was trying to not drown in many areas of my life, as probably throughout like a 10-year period, I would say. Now, this experience, this black sheep experience, it's like a break in belonging. It's like my family of origin, I don't necessarily belong there. And then what comes with that sometimes is, well, then where do I belong? And then for some people, they find their chosen family, they find their friends, and they find like, this is my family, which is beautiful. But if we just want to take the piece that there's a break in belonging with the family, how is that impacting your relationship with belonging? Or my family doesn't see me, or my family doesn't understand me. How does that impact your experience of just wanting to be understood and seen in such a particular way, because your nervous system and the fabric of your existence doesn't actually know what it's like to be seen or understood or be in alignment? So is that impacting even the friendships and the relationships that you have when it comes to conforming or not conforming, or belonging or not belonging? How does that bridge to be having the experience of being the black sheep of the family? And I think for some of us, there's an opportunity in being or thinking, I'm not sure there's any real truth, of being the black sheep, except for it might be a feeling, or a sense, in formal psychology, the black sheep syndrome is a thing, but really just feeling like you're the black sheep of the family is just kind of, conceptual. But in any case, the beauty of it can be that if you feel like you're going a little bit off course in the rest of your family, maybe you're the one who's going to heal the thing that has kept the family in the same psychological rat race, if you will. You're the one who goes, oh, maybe I'm going to see this a little bit differently than my family. And because I'm going to see it a little bit differently, maybe there's some way that I can see it objectively, rather than the way they're living is wrong and what they're doing is wrong, or what they're doing just doesn't work for me, and so I'm going to rebel or make them wrong or tell them they're doing it wrong. That actually is an opportunity to objectify the way in which you've lived, the way in which you were brought up, so that you can maybe find a new way, right? Like you could be like the new, the bringing in the new transformation bringing in transformation into your bloodline. And the beauty of it is if and when you can sort of objectify the psychological different disposition of your family, which doesn't mean it's like them and you, because whether we're the black sheep, or whether we're the golden child, or wherever we were, if we're an only child, or we're first in line, or second in line, or third in line, it would be almost impossible to not be affected, to not have childhood trauma from your family of origin, whether or not you feel like you are aligned with the way that they roll through life or not. And if you can see that the trauma, also known as, the way that I define trauma, is any decision that your nervous system had to make to keep you safe over time. Any one or series of decisions that it had to make to keep you safe, particularly between the ages of 0 and 8. It was making decision after decision after decision in response to your environment to keep you safe. And those decisions, many of those are still set in your nervous system well through adult life, also known as trauma. And trauma is important. I'm not sure there's such thing as a trauma-free individual. Trauma is what creates our identity. It's what creates the unique way in which we move through life. Now, we want to certainly heal the default way, like the automatic way in which we revert to moving through life, so that we can be more at choice from the point of view of our true nature, which is the other side of trauma healing. But what I wanted to say was, I wanted to use this analogy of a used car, okay? So let's say there's a car that's been passed along 3 generations now. You know, your grandfather had it, your father had it, and now you have it. Just an analogy. Not saying this has happened to me or anybody that I know. But now you have the car, okay? It's a classic car, you know, it's 40 years old, and it's your car. But you have to maybe get a new engine. You have to upgrade the window cranker things, right? Because they're the inside tread on the window cranker is worn out. So it's like we're all used cars, but we have to own the car that we have and update it. So that used car is like, has been going through time, and you're like psyched to have it. And even though you're fixing things that could have been your dad's responsibility, like my dad could have gotten the new engine. Why didn't he get the new engine? Then I wouldn't have to pay for the new engine, right? Or, you know, if when my grandfather bought the car, if he like, you know, changed the oil more often, then maybe none of us would have this engine issue now, you know, 40 years later or whatever. So we're all used cars being passed along. So you can, you know, say that the problem is your parents. If you're not saying the problem is you, and you're saying the problem is your parents, if it's not you, then it's not your parents either. It's their parents. And if it's not their problem, it's their parents' problem. So where are we in the family chain if we keep inheriting trauma, and then all of a sudden we go, I'm not my family, I'm the black sheep? Okay, great. If you're the black sheep, then identify the parts of you that are still them. Identify, it's almost like we have a particular responsibility if we're the black sheep, to say, I can see their programming. It's not my programming. I'm still affected by it, but I actually can see it more objectively. And since I can see it more objectively, then I can see theirs more objectively. And I can see their trauma because it's the same that I have. I can see their trauma, and I can notice the distinction between them, between their trauma and their true nature. Because sometimes we feel as the black sheep, like, we're, you know, a lot of people who are the black sheep, or they have this black sheep syndrome, it's like we're dealing with a whole set of psychological criteria that it feels like our family is not dealing with, which may be awesome that they don't have to deal with that. It's not always easy trying to do like the different thing, but those of us who are black sheep, it's like we don't have a choice. You know, I feel like I was the black sheep. I moved away, I moved out of state. I also was a huge stress on my family for a lot of years, because I was trying to do things differently, and I was trying to walk a different path, and I just had so many issues all over the place, and but I didn't necessarily have a choice. So it's not like I'm the black sheep because I'm like better or different, or I wanted to do things differently. I did want to do things differently, but I'm not sure I had any more of a choice to do things differently than my family, than they had to do things the way they were doing things. like, I was kind of born this way, and for a lot of people, most of us were born with a particular disposition, and we're either in service to that disposition or not. Like, I could have felt like I was the black sheep and never left, and then there would always be this incongruence in my life. Never left where I grew up. But I was determined to go with my natural instinct that I'm a black sheep and I want to do things differently, even though that path was like really, really, really difficult. And for a lot of people who are black sheeps, they're like, screw it, I'll just go home. I'll just live around my family and just, live the prescribed life. And maybe that would just be better and be easier. And maybe that's true. It's not to say, that's the other thing about the part of the black sheep syndrome, is that for some of us, we feel like we're doing it the right way and the family's doing it the wrong way. Or the family's not thinking outside of the box and we're thinking outside of the box. Well, great. If you think you're thinking outside of the box, then view your family outside of the box. Actually provide that as a gift. Meaning, see them as people living the life that they inherited to the best of their ability. Just like the black sheep is living the life that they inherited to the best of their ability. And nobody is doing it better. Because we all have trauma. We all have the ways in which we stumble through our own personality and think that we all have the way in which we sort of bend reality, which is my video from last week, Where is Reality? And I think the dark side and the downside of feeling like you're the black sheep is like feeling like, it's them and me. It's them against me because they're a certain way and I'm a totally different, or I'm a certain way. And I think that is really like an automatic disconnect. And I'm not saying that you have to be connected with your family. There's some people that are not connected with their family, and it's the healthiest things for them, and that's fine. But sometimes people just choose disconnection with their family because they're a black sheep and they don't feel seen. And there's also an interesting sort of phase, I think, in the journey of the black sheep, if you will, when they sort of have always known that they feel different than their family, and there's family members that feel different from their family that don't identify as a black sheep. I mean, we all feel different in some way. So it's not even always that the one that identifies as a black sheep is the most different one. But it's this like, way in which one sits inside of a role in their family. But in any case, what I was saying was that sometimes there's a phase in this black sheep journey, which is, I've always known that I don't quite belong with my family or the traditional way in which they move through life. Or not just with my family, but with sort of like humanity in general. I think I may want to do it a different way. And I've been conforming to my family or certain belief systems or certain traditions for so long. Now I don't want to conform to that. And I'm sort of trying to find who that person is if I'm not playing this role that works inside my family, if I'm not playing this codependent role, if I'm not playing this being in service to the family dynamic in a particular way. If I'm not that person, then who am I? And then when you're trying to figure out who you are if you're not that member of the family, and then your family is sort of like, well, who are you? And you're like, I don't know who I am. So sometimes there's like a little bit of a tug of war, because now you're changing the dynamic and the communication between you and your family members, and they're like, whoa, you know, what's going on? You're not listening to me in the same way you used to, or you're not appeasing me in the same way that you used to. And that also happens in marriages as well, when all of a sudden one wants to change the dynamic because they realize they've been playing an unconscious role for so long. And then there's like, you feel a part of you dying and metamorphosizing and recreating, and during that time it can be very tense between you and your partner, and or you and your family of origin. And even though that time can seem really just strenuous and confronting and disconnecting and upsetting, I can't think of the other word, but what is possibly happening is that you are morphing the trajectory of your lineage. You're cleaning out the trauma that is, you're like a catalyst for cleaning out the trauma that is in your bloodline and your lineage. And then at some point, when you're on the other side of your metamorphosis and you are like full black sheep, you're fully you're fully the butterfly that that is sort of the North Star of who you want to be, then you can possibly reconnect with your family, reconnect with your partner. It doesn't mean you have to stay married, or it doesn't mean you have to then be best friends with your family, but you can reunite in a way where you don't need, your identity does not depend on them. Your identity does not depend on their acceptance or them seeing it or understanding it, but that your identity actually depends on understanding them. And that is like you breaking and tearing apart the codependent stronghold that it is in your relationship or in your family, and coming back and saying, actually, the freedom of my existence and the freedom of who I've finally created myself to be doesn't depend on you getting it or seeing it or understanding it, or even seeing me in a particular way, or even agreeing with me or who I've become. I just am. And if you don't understand that, that's okay, because I actually understand you, and I understand why you wouldn't understand me. And that is, I think, the beauty and the gift of being one who may feel like or identify as the black sheep of the family. And it could, like I said, during that metamorphosis, it could cause a reverberation of pain and disconnection and tug of war, because while you're choosing to metamorphosize, your family or your relationship is metamorphosizing without choosing it. They're like, something's changing. I don't know what it is. I didn't choose this. So they're almost on some level the victim to your transformation, and eventually they could be the beneficiaries of it. Excuse me. All right, everybody. Have an awesome weekend. Please let me know. Email me or instant message me if you want more information about my Attunement Group program that starts at the end of March. I still have spots available. And the promise of the 3-month group program is, number one, it's much cheaper than my individual group programs. I wanted to make it more cost effective and available for more people, and that in the 3 months you will have your default psychology distinguished, and that way you will be living less from autopilot after the 3 months. Have an awesome weekend, Happy healing. You are awesome. Life is now. Bye, everybody.